And we're starting now. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. Looks like Emanuele, it looks like your camera has gone out. But maybe if you just hit refresh. But it looks like everyone else is here. Vanya, Kat, hello, hello.
Hey, hello, Ellie.
Hello.
And we have a few people already online. Hey, if you're just joining us, you'll see on the right side there is a chat. Feel free to say hello and let us know where you're from. This is the, I think this is the 8th IFSCC webinar in our series. And there we are, we have Sonia. Hello, Sonia. Sonia Gomez. Hello, welcome online. I am Perry Romanowski. I'm the educational chair of the Education Committee, and I am located in Chicago. Vanya, where are you located?
I'm from Brazil and I am in São Paulo. Just
Oh,
now.
São Paulo. And then we have, well, look at Sonia is from Argentina. All right, well, welcome, Sonia.
Neighbor, it's my neighbor.
Indeed. Katz, it's a little late for you right now. Where are you located?
Very late.
Yeah.
It's 12 at night.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
well, thank you for joining us.
Mhm.
We got Maria from Argentina and Mate Lopez from New York. Oh yes, Mate, sure. And look, Emanuele is coming back. You're back in the room, Emanuele. You just need to turn on your camera. We're going to get started with this unique presentation shortly in just about 8 minutes. Once we can get things worked out with Emanuele. Looks like right now your sound isn't working or video, but if you could, Emanuele, if you could hit the refresh button on your browser, that might get you back in the room. And everything was working so smashingly before. Well, as everybody's coming on board, this is the IFSCC. There's Tony Fitzpatrick. I know Tony. Used to work with Tony right here at Alberto Culver in the United States. Welcome on board. It's great to see you there. And we're having some technical difficulties with Emanuele, although he was on board, and maybe he's coming back.
I know that Emmanuel, he's in Sardinia right now. So his vacation.
Maybe the connection is not.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Well, we'll make him talk last. We're going to get started with this webinar shortly. If you're just joining us, hello, welcome. This is the IFSCC webinar. We're going to be talking about, this is a different kind of one for us. We're going to be talking about just how we all got involved in the cosmetic industry. There are a lot of people in the IFSCC and the Society of Cosmetic Chemists around the world who have an interest in, you know, starting a career and seeing how their career might develop. We've all sort of have different paths to get into the cosmetic industry, and it's interesting. I recall when I was in college, I didn't even know the cosmetic industry existed. So we're going to talk about all of that coming up. We've got Melania from Brazil. Hello, welcome. We've got dozens of people already on board. Welcome. If you want to say hello, tell us in the chat room there, and there's a chat there. Just let us know where you're from. We've got Akshata from India. Hello, all the way from India. We've got almost the whole globe covered. Katz, where did you say you were located right now?
I'm in Japan, the Yokohama.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Japan. Yes, we have the Yokohama conference coming up in October.
Yes, we will have. Unfortunately, we cannot have a real physical congress, but now we are planning the web congress. So
it looks like an excellent lineup of speakers. Do you have any ideas about? Is that going to take place over a couple of days, or is it going to be a whole interactive experience?
Yes, because this time we will set up the Web Congress. So we extended the period, the 10 days Web Congress. So you can join anytime, 24 hours, and as much as you can. So
yes.
Yes.
You actually have the potential to see more of the Congress because whereas if you go to a live event, there are like concurrent sessions happening, but now you can see everything, right? So,
yeah,
right.
So
yeah, as far as the material goes, that's great. Well, we've got a lot more people checking in. We've got Maria from Brazil. Hello. We've got Amelia from Amalia from Malaysia. Wow, Malaysia. So now we're really over all the Bob Kuma from India. Hello, hello everybody. We got George from Atlanta, Georgia. Hello. I hope you're all staying safe out there. We are going to get started in just a couple of minutes. This is IFSCC webinar in our webinar series. We're going to be talking a cosmetic science career and how people get involved there. We're waiting for Emanuele to come back online. He seems out. Actually, you know, I'm going to see if I can turn on his camera. Maybe I'll try this trick to get him to come back on. I will send him out, and then hopefully he comes back on. So right now there's the three of us. Oh, the wonders of technology, right? It is really quite, it's actually quite amazing that we're all over the planet right now, but we can still join together here. Welcome to everybody who's come on board so far. We've got Beatriz from Guatemala. Hello. Shweta from Mumbai, India. Oh, we've got a few people from India. I'm gonna hopefully get Kat or Emanuele back online here. Just a moment.
Kat, I don't think we will have a lot of people from Japan because of the special time.
Yeah, too late. Yeah,
well,
not only just Japan, Korea, China,
China, and
from Asia.
Well, I should mention that we are recording this, so they'll be able to watch this at another time. Yeah, so welcome everybody who's coming on. Susanna from Buenos Aires. Hello, welcome. Laura from Sao Paulo. Hello. Those are excellent place. I'd love to see that. And we've got Emanuele is back. Hello, Emanuele.
Oh, hello. Sorry.
He's back. Okay. Now it's all working. Hello. Okay, we're going to get started in just 1 minute. So at that time, incidentally, if you're online and in the chat room, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them in, and we'll have a little question and answer session after we go through the basic questions we wanted to cover here. We got Dr. Pani from Switzerland. Hello. Nilesh from Mumbai, Elton from Brasilia. Hello, welcome everybody. So good to see everybody. Malani from California. So we've got people from all over the world right now joining us. We're going to get started. I'm going to do a couple of minute presentation just about the SCC, and then we'll get, or the IFSCC, and then we'll get started. So without further ado, it's just, there it is, the top of the hour. I like to start exactly on time, and we're going to get started. Hello, everybody. If you have a question, feel free to post it in there in the comments, and we're going to be answering questions at the end of this. So let me just get started with a short introduction with the IFSCC. The IFSCC is the International Federation of Society of Cosmetic Chemists. It's a worldwide organization, and as you can see by this this graphic here, we have federations from around the world, 49 different national societies, and we're growing. It's all about a dedication to international cooperation in cosmetic science and technology. We are an organization all about education, and specifically in the area of cosmetics. Now, as a member of the IFSCC, incidentally, if you're a member of any Society of Cosmetic Chemists membership, you are automatically an IFSCC member. One of the great benefits of being an IFSCC member is access to COSMET. COSMET is a cosmetic science database. We have the archives of the IFSCC magazine. We have over 84,000 abstracts of scientific articles published there. It's used by researchers, patent officers, university. It's an excellent place to do any kind of research. And this is something that you as an IFSCC member have access to. Other benefits are the IFSCC magazine that you get I believe it comes out quarterly. We have the virtual library, these collection of webinars, various videos. There is opportunities to win awards at the IFSCC congresses and conferences. We have host educational programs that are on site. Of course, right now it's a lot harder to be on site, but as the world opens up again, we will start those back up. Most of our educational stuff has gone virtual, and these webinars are an example of that. As a member of the IFSCC, you also get discounted registrations to our congresses and conferences. So that's the IFSCC in a nutshell. It's really all about a worldwide communication of formulation information and information about cosmetic science. All right, well, welcome everybody to our webinar. That's our little introduction, but today we have something special for you. We're gonna be talking about how people got involved in the cosmetic industry. Now, today, I'm gonna just introduce who we have online here. Today we have Professor Vanya Leti, and she's from the, she's the president of the Brazilian Cosmetologia organization, and she represents the IFSCC 2025 Brazil Congress. She's a professor at the University Federal in Sao Paulo. Welcome, Vanya.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
And we have Katz. He is the representative of the Society of Cosmetic Chemists of Japan. He's on the IFSCC Presidium since 2016, and he is integral in the planning of the IFSCC 2020 Yokohama Congress, which is coming up in October. Hello, Katz.
Hi, everybody.
And we have Emanuele. He started his tenure as the IFSCC president during the 2019 IFSCC Milan conference, and he's been working in technical sales at the Merck Group since 2008. Hello, Emanuele.
Hello.
Okay, well, this is a very interesting topic, but why don't we start with you, Vanya, and you can tell us a little bit, just how did you get involved in the cosmetic industry?
So, first of all, hello everybody. I don't know if you saw some types in Portuguese. It was my mom. So, mom, love you. She doesn't speak English, but she told Vanya, I am here. So, thanks, mom, for the support. Mary, as you said before, when I was a child, I didn't know about cosmetic industry, and I even didn't know about the pharmacy course. So I wanted to be a movie star, but it didn't work, as you can see. So when I was in high school, I realized that I loved chemistry and biological things. So I decided to be a pharmacist. But I decided to be a pharmacist because my dream job was to work in a medical testing lab, you know, to do something about blood tests, urine tests.
Sure.
And then when I was looking for my first job, I saw the name of the company, Laboratory. So I thought it was a biochemistry one. So I said, this is the place. And then I entered there and I said to the pharmacist, this is my dream. I would love to work in a place like this. This is my my wish. And he said, okay, so you can start. And then in my first day, I said, the smell is so good. And he said, of course, it is a cosmetic laboratory. And I was in shock. And I said, okay, I am here, so I'm going to stay here maybe for 1 year, and then I can quit. I can leave this place and follow my dream. And didn't work for me because I fallen in love for this area, and I stayed working. I was working in this industry area for 22 years.
Wow.
And then I became a professor. So it's a crazy way to enter in an area, but this is the way for me.
So you accidentally ended up in the job, and then 22 years later, you were still at it.
Yeah. Now it's 32 years working in a cosmetic area, because I spent 22 in an industry area and 10 years as a professor.
Well, you must have started. You must have started when you were in grade school, or the cosmetics are looking very good. That's right. Well, thanks for that story. Now we're going to get back to your education, but first let's talk to Katz. Katz, you're in Japan now. How did you end up in the cosmetic industry?
Well, yes, that's a long story. Well, I was born and grown up in a small town in Japan, and near seaside, and I play every day in the beach, and I wanted to be a marine scientist at the time. So I went to the university, the Faculty of Marine Science, and I wanted to join the Antarctic research team and stay there for a year. But I found I was really bad at physics.
Yeah.
So I gave up to join that team, and gave up, become a marine scientist. So then I moved to the polymer science. I changed my major, and my PhD thesis was the electrostatic interaction of the polyelectrolyte and oppositely charged colloid.
Yeah.
It sounds easy. It's quite interesting. The formula is quite similar to the mixture of the polymer and some colloid.
Yeah.
Micelles and the emulsions and the powders. So I think, okay, maybe the background can be useful for cosmetic industry. And also I thought the cosmetic industry is very, what can I say, it's a peaceful industry, because everybody think about how we can make people beautiful. So I decided, okay, I like to join the beauty industry, and I joined the Shiseido, and 28 years ago, still I'm working in this industry.
Oh, wow. 28 years. Wow. It's great. Well, that's excellent. We're going to get a little bit more about your educational background and how you and what's important for that. But first, we're going to go Emanuele. Emanuele, can you turn your audio back on? So just click the bottom. There you go. Turn that on.
Okay.
So, well, welcome, Emanuele. Where are you located?
I'm in Sardinia. Yeah. Even if my job place is Milano, but I'm on vacation in this moment, enjoying my beautiful island. And this is the place where I was born. When I was a kid, my dream, I had two dreams basically. One was music, and the other one was being car designer. I was dreaming to be an engineer to design. I was in love with car shapes. You know, we are in the country of Ferrari, Lamborghini, so this kind of
Sure.
brands were on my mind. But basically, I wanted to become a musician, and I started studying music when I was really a child. And today I'm still playing, but I'm not a musician. And
Wait, what instrument do you play?
I play several instruments. I play piano, bass guitar, a little bit of drums and guitars. And okay.
I'm sorry, Emanuele, you are a musician. Believe me, you are.
Oh, you've heard him
A
play,
good
yeah?
one.
But this is not my first job, you know. I have to do something different to live, let's say. And okay, so I met chemistry at the high school, and as Vanya, my job, my dream for my job was to work in a sanitary laboratory to be an analyst, you know. So analysis for blood, for biological stuff, this kind of things, and this is what basically I study. Then I got a kind of specialization in water treatment process, and this was my first job. So I started working for a U.S. company, which is now Ashland. At that time, the name was GAF, and I was there as probably Perry, you know this brand.
Yeah.
And at that time, 30 years ago, exactly, in 1990, I started as a sales engineer. And this company was dealing with basically different business, industrial business and cosmetic and pharma business. And I have to tell you, by chance, some colleagues asked me, why don't you switch to cosmetic and be part of our team dealing with raw materials? And so I started, and after, you know, almost 30 years, I had my path in this wonderful job, which was not planned at all, let's say.
Well, I think one of the interesting things you note about these different stories is, first of all, when you get into the cosmetic industry, you tend to stay there. I mean, we've got people. I've been in the industry for almost 30 years. Everybody's over 25 years, and why do you think when people get into the cosmetic industry, we just want to stay there?
Good question. Can I answer?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think I like the definition of CATS. It's a peaceful industry, and it's something about beauty. It's something about well-being, and especially in my case, after so many years, I can't remember one day similar to the other. Every day there is something new. And the news are coming from science, are coming from market, are coming from consumer, from influencers today. So there is always something new to take care of. And this is something really exciting. I don't know if other industries can have the same, lively mood.
Yeah.
And I think when we sell cosmetics, we also sell hope. I don't know if the word is correct, but
Yeah.
think that you can make something better for your hair or your skin. And this correlation with well-being is so great. And I think inside the cosmetic industry, we have different areas. So if you like more development, you can work in R&D. If you like search, or if you like, for example, regulatory laws. So there are different ways to work in this area. And I simply love all about cosmetics.
Yeah. Katz, why do you imagine that when a scientist gets into the cosmetic industry, they kind of stick around?
Oh, yes. My answer is in the same line with the Vania, because we are not creating just a cosmetic product, but also we are providing happiness and a smile to our consumers. And once we know we create a new product and sell it, and someone buy it and use it and smile, we cannot uh, we cannot leave from this industry.
I agree.
Power of lipstick.
Absolutely. I think, and for me, as a scientist, one of the things that I really enjoy about the industry is you work on a product and then it actually goes out into the world. There are a lot of scientists who get into laboratories and run all kinds of interesting experiments. And the only thing that they end up making is maybe a paper that gets published in a journal, or they make some incremental discovery. But as a cosmetic formulator or cosmetic chemist, you actually make products that other people actually use. And I always thought that was one of the greatest things.
Mm-hmm. And
so
the other one thing I can add is that even that the product itself is very small, it's not very, what can I say, it's cutting edge and the rocket science, not rocket science things, but it includes so many technologies. The colloid science, the powder technologies, and the dermatology and the biochemistries.
Yeah.
And
psychology.
Psychologies and yes, and so on.
There's so much involved, and you can specialize in certain areas, but you can't know everything, and there's always something new to learn. Yes. So that's how we kind of got into the industry. Let's talk a little bit about what kind of courses when you went to college, what kind of degrees are you getting, and what did you study in college? We'll start with you, Vania.
So in college, I did a pharmacist course. In Brazil, my course was 5 years, 3 years to be a pharmacist, and 5 years you became a biochemistry pharmacist. So it was like this almost more than 30 years ago. Now it's just pharmacy course. But at that time, well, in 5 years, you became a pharmacist, biochemist, and biochemistry. And then after I was working in the cosmetic industry for around 10 years. And then I decided to do a master's degree in this area because I knew at the end that my target was to be a professor. So I did master and my doctor degree in cosmetic area. And after this, when I became a professor, I did my postdoctoral in Australia, also in this area. So my whole life, I just studied cosmetic science.
Ah, interesting. Emanuele, when you were in college, what kind of schooling did you have? What kind of degrees did you take?
Okay, I study biochem, and as I said, after that, I decide by chance to have this industrial course in water processes, because at the time I was living here in Sardinia, water issues, let's say, was a big problem. Yeah, and there was a lot of discussion on how to recover water from from rain or all the things, how to make the desalination of seawater, all these kind of things. And so I studied in this direction. And as I said, my first job was in this field. And then I switched to cosmetic, but I haven't a doctorate in cosmetic. It's only by experience, and thanks to the companies I work with, especially the time I was working as a distributor for Lubrizol, I had the chance to start the polymer, the acrylic derived chemistry, and at that time I started to teach. Once I I learned chemistry, polymers like carbomers, I start to work for professional courses until today. I ended up teaching in master's courses for 3 universities here in Italy. Yeah, but my all studies process was not in cosmetics, as Vanya did.
Yeah, very.
Not typical or untypical path, let's say.
Yeah, very interesting. And Katz, what was it like in Japan and going through school there? What kind of degrees did you study there?
Yeah, okay. So as I said, I started my university. I wanted to be a marine scientist. So I joined the Hokkaido University in Japan, the Northern Island. And I graduated the school and went to a master course. At that time, I studied how we can utilize the marine resources, like the nutrition, the fish and the seaweed and the seashells, the kind of so many nutritions from the marine the resources we can utilize. And then I moved to Osaka, and I joined the School of Science of Polymer Science, and completely different world, but quite interesting for me. And my doctor's thesis was the polymers interaction with colloid, and my interest was I wanted to find out the general rule or the equation, the how I can understand the electrostatic interaction of the polyelectrolyte and oppositely charged small colloid in aqueous phase. So the polymer charge density and the colloid surface charge density and the Debye length, those three was a very important the factor how I can describe the interaction between those two colloids. So that was my interest at that time.
Now, I'm curious about how things work in different countries. In the United States, I went to school. I got a degree. First, I started with a degree in biology because I liked animals. And when I got to my 4th year of college, in the United States, you typically have a 4-year degree. I looked around for jobs, and there weren't a lot of jobs for people with biology degrees. But there are a lot of jobs for people with chemistry degrees. And so I switched my major at that point and became a chemistry major, and I took 1 more year. And then when I got out of the university, then I could apply for jobs. And back then, you would find a job by just going through the newspaper. Jobs were listed in the newspaper, and you would send people a resume. Now, I'm curious, in different countries, how does that transition from what you're doing in college to then getting a job? How does that happen? Now, Vanya, you mentioned that you found a place that said laboratory, but how did you identify places that had jobs?
Perry, here in Brazil, we also can do, depending on the course, but we also can do double, what is the word? Double certification?
Double majors, yeah.
So you can, yes, you can be biochemistry and a chemistry as well. So you can add some years in your course. It's not for all of the course, but some of them. And as I said before, in cosmetic area, we can have a lot of different courses. For example, you can employ a pharmacist, you can employ a chemistry, you also can employ a biologist, and people that work with aesthetic. We have a graduation now here for this. And so in different areas, even marketing, or now for neuromarketing, and also employ physicists. Is this correct?
Yeah.
Physicists,
sure.
and also people that work in a marketing area with a background in chemistry or something, but the post-graduation is in marketing area, for example. So different ways. I think when I look at my past, I think that I made some correct decision. For example, pharmacist, be a pharmacist in Brazil. It's a very how can I say, it's not a strict area. So
right,
you have
it's a broad area. Yes.
Yeah, it's a broad area, different fields to work. So it's not hard to find a job as pharmacist in Brazil, because you can work in many different areas.
Lots of places, yes. And Emanuele, what is it like in Italy, that transition from you're getting a degree in college and then you've got to get a job? So how do people do that?
Okay, when I started my career in 90s was much easier to find a job compared to today. And I started in technical sales, and at the time, all companies, especially the big ones, the multinational companies, were focusing more on technical skilled people to put on sales instead of research. Research was more in the headquarters or in the universities. Yeah, and so at the time it was very easy to buy a newspaper, go to the job search page, and choose the best place to work and change. Yeah. So basically, the companies were looking for technical skilled people, generally skilled, let's say, not specifically in a specific job, and then the companies were taking care of the education, something like this. And this is what I did. Yeah, so I started cosmetology. I was driven to cosmetic science by the company I worked with. Yeah, so was probably my path is different because being on sales, I had a different approach compared to the people who started focused on research. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious. You got into sales, and a lot of people, scientists in the cosmetic industry, maybe they're in the lab first and then they get into sales. But as in sales, there are some different skill sets you need. How did you learn that business side of things? Was it on the job, or did you take a course or something like that?
Both of them. On the job, thanks to the companies I work with, and still today, after 30 years, my company is me for MBAs or for specific courses for managing people, or all the things you need to know to stay on the job. Yeah. And also by ourselves, of course. Yeah. So I think we did. Yeah.
That is one of the things, at least in the United States, that you'll discover. What you learn in a university about chemistry doesn't tell you a lot about what you will be doing every day as a cosmetic chemist.
Yeah.
Most of that you learn on the job.
Yeah.
So, Katz, in Japan, how is the transition from college to getting a career? How does that happen?
Okay. In Japan, everything starts from April. Like in school or the company, and so like in US, the school starts from the September, right?
Yeah.
So, but in Japan, in cherry blossom season, April is everything
Okay.
starting season. So we go to school and graduate in March. So the 1 year before the graduation, the company the company send their HR person to the university college and having some recruitment activities, and they have the seminars and explain what kind of job they are looking for and what kind of the company they are doing the business. So many students join those seminars and they're having understanding what kind of industry, what kind of the company they like to join. So for me, I joined a couple of the seminars, and I found the Shiseido is one of the company I like to join. So after that, I sent my resume to the company, and they said the interview, and if the boss agree to hire and join, so and that's a kind of the normal process in Japan.
Yeah. It's very interesting how we all ended up there, but somehow we did end up in the cosmetic industry. I just want to take a break just right at the second. If you're online, thank you for watching and tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to post them. We're gonna talk about 15 minutes more, and then we can answer some of the questions you might post. So if you have any questions about the cosmetic industry, how you get into it, your cosmetic career, we'll be answering those types of questions. All right, now we've talked about a little bit about how you got into the industry, your background. One of the things I'm curious about is your first job, and what kind of things did you learn on that first job? What kind of skills that have taken you through your career right now? Katz, why don't we go with you first, since I've been taking you third each time. So we'll give everyone else a chance to think about that. So what kind of stuff that you didn't learn in college, but you had to learn on the job in your first job, and what were you expected to do?
Wow. Yeah, first I joined a company. I was assigned as a basic research group, and my job was create a new emulsion. And I didn't know anything about emulsion when I was a college student.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about what is the surfactant and how I should choose the correct surfactant for kind of the variety of the oil and OW emulsion and the WO emulsions and the mud emulsions. So I learned a lot in my first 2-3 years. I can make the stable emulsion and how I can evaluate the character of those emulsion creams and the rheologies and those kind of the technologies, how I can create and evaluate the stability of those emulsions.
That is one of the things I found most challenging on the job as a formulator, is just how do you evaluate things? There isn't some simple procedure where it tells you just look it up and you say do this, this, and this, and you're evaluated. There's so much involved in touching and feeling and putting stuff together yourself that unless you actually do it, it's not something you can just learn from a book. That's kind of my experience.
And also, I think when we were in a university, it's just an overview. So even for me, that I am a pharmacist and I knew before how to prepare an emulsion, for example, but when you are in an industry, you know the problem, what happened when you have a problem, for example, in a production. So to solve the problems, and especially not only develop new formulation, but how this formulation will, the behavior of this formulation inside the production. So sometimes you change the company that sell the raw material, and you have to do a new test. And this is something that you can't teach at the university. So now I'm talking as a professor, okay? So it's, for my students, for example, I just give an overview for each topic, because in 1 year I have to talk about cream, lotion, shampoos, hair conditioner, something to color the hair, makeup. So it's a lot of things in just 1 year. And so I think at the university you have this background, I don't know, the overview. And when you choose something to do, and I always say to my students, you have to choose one thing to be good on it, because you can't be good in everything. You can't know everything. So choose one area and be good on it, and do specialization and something.
I think that's one of the unique parts about being a cosmetic chemist. There are so many areas where you can specialize. You could specialize in skincare products or hair care products or color cosmetics. And you can even specialize in raw materials. There are some people who, if you want to know about cosmetic preservatives, there are some people that are expert in preservation, or there are people that are expert in thickening, right? And so, exactly. So there's so many areas where you can specialize, but if you tried to know everything, you'll come away knowing next to nothing.
Yeah.
So I put that question to you, Emanuele, also. What kind of skills and things did you learn on the job right away that weren't covered in your formal education?
Okay, I remember the first day in cosmetic, because as I said before, I started in industrial processes. I was working with water sewage plants, water filtration, all these kind of things. And then when I switched to the cosmetic, my boss at that time, the very first day, told me, "Okay, you will start now a cosmetology course." And then I started the course with a professor. And at the end of the first day, I was wondering, am I doing the right? Did I take the decision? Because my mind was blowing, starting from having an experience on simple in bracket water and all the stuff related, talking about emulsions, HLB that today nobody takes care of. It's all about polymers, water phase, lipid phase, emulsifiers, and so on, was really blowing my mind. But then I really focused on this science, and I think I learned a lot. And as you said, and also Vanya, I try to be focused on some raw materials, the one I was taking care of, and especially in thickening, and today in sun care ingredients. And I decided to work focused on these molecules, trying to understand everything all around, from formulation point of view to efficacy, stability, and so on. Yeah.
And also we have to
but
remember,
focus.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So go again. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Vanya.
No, also we have to remember that at that time we didn't have internet. I know this because Emmanuel and me, we are the same age.
Yeah. Even if you look younger.
So, because I painted my hair. This is the point. I use cosmetics in my hair. At that time, we didn't have internet, so all the information that we had came from the professor or research paper, or you had to work to learn day by day. So nowadays we have a lot of information on the internet. It's easier to learn, but it's harder to take a job, I think.
Yeah.
I think perception.
I agree. I remember when I first got into the industry, I looked around and there were just a few books on the subject of formulating. And a lot of them were written in a way where they expected you to already know some basic stuff that I didn't know. In fact, that is what led me to join another chemist, and we co-authored a series of articles that got turned into a book, Beginning Cosmetic Chemistry. And it was all about that transition from what you learned in college to getting into the industry. What were some of the early resources that you used to learn chemistry or cosmetic chemistry? Katz, do you remember some of your early books and such?
Well, I don't remember exactly what I read, but I was belong to SCCJ, and they have so many good seminars, and they published the textbook. I learned from a lot from the society, and they gave us so many good education programs. So it's quite helpful.
That was my experience too. Tanya, is that kind of your experience also?
Yes. Here I didn't have a lot of material, as I said, but I know especially one book. The name was Basic Cosmetology. I think this is the correct in English. I don't know, but it's basic cosmetology. And I used to read every day one chapter just to organize my mind, because remember, I entered in a wrong place. So it was not expecting to work in this area. So I had to read a lot.
We've got...
In Italy, we have a book. No, I just wanted to say, we have a very thick book, something like this. And the title is, in Italian, is Manuale del Cosmetologo, which means the cosmetologist handbook. And this is something I would like also to switch to IFSCC in some way. And this is a real handbook with everything from basic formulation to biology. And the book was written many years ago, the first edition, and it is constantly updated. And I still have it, the new edition, and it's like a Bible. I mean, whenever you have some doubts, look in the search index and find the topic. It's really good.
Barry, can I show something?
Sure. Yeah.
So now that's the reason why I wrote a book.
Oh, okay.
Cosmetic formulation.
Sure.
So this is to make
your own
easier. To make it easier for the starters. So
that book is available on Amazon, right? I believe I've seen it there. Yes. That's an excellent piece of work. I think you are correct. The kids these days have it so much easier. It was a lot harder to learn. But on the other hand, what you also find is that on the internet, there is also a lot of misinformation. So you still really do need people with an expertise in the topic to be learning from. Your random YouTuber or Instagrammer they might have learned a little bit, but they don't have that depth of knowledge that you really need if you want to learn a subject. All right, we've been talking 45 minutes, and we've got a few questions that came in. Now, I'm going to have to put on my glasses to read. I don't like the. So what do we got here?
Yes, we are 4 of us.
Here's a, yeah, there we go. We're all about the same age, I'm guessing. Here's a question from Roan. He says, do you know of chemical engineers in this industry, and what kind of direction would a chemical engineer go into the cosmetic industry? So how does chemical engineering cross over into the cosmetic industry?
Yeah, it's very important. For us, we have factory, and we need so many process engineer, and not only just a factory in the lab. We call it's a process engineering group. It's a connection, the bridge between the lab and the factory. So in the laboratory, we usually make 100 milliliter or the 500 milliliter, but in the factory, and 1,000 kg or the 2,000 kg. So in between that, we need the connection between the scaling up. So process engineer is a very important function for this industry.
Yeah. I can add that Kat is working in finished products. I'm working with raw materials, and this is exactly the same in raw materials. The process engineering, the scaling up people are very, very important, and the process in raw material production is really industrial processing. So the chemical engineer are very precious people in our industry today. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Vanya.
No, I was talking about the same from Emmanuel.
Well, I would like to say that in the United States, many of the big companies, I'm thinking of like L'Oreal, they actually prefer to hire chemical engineers, and then they could train them in their own system to become formulators. And so a degree in chemical engineering is really a good one if you wanted to get into the cosmetic industry. As was said, you can get a job as a process engineer, and that is just that's being the interface, as Kat said, between the laboratory, where we make little small beakers full of things, and turning it into a plant where you're making 3,000 gallons of a material. And so that's a big difference, and you need chemists to kind of bridge that gap, and that's where chemical engineers come in. Then process engineers, they get to travel around the world to different facilities to try to validate formulations and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting job, especially if you like to travel. Okay, we got another question here. This is a question for Professor Vanya. That was an interesting comment about pharmacy. I'm a pharmacist myself, and I'm studying cosmetic science at the moment. How much crossover do you think there is between pharmacy and cosmetic science? And how do you think being a pharmacist benefited your cosmetic career?
I'm going to talk about Brazilian fields, okay? Yeah. I don't know around the world, but in Brazil, because the pharmacist course is very abroad, you said this word, abroad?
Yeah, it's very broad, yes.
A pharmacist can work with medicine in a medical testing lab, and also in cosmetic area. And when you do a post-graduation, a specialization in cosmetic area, so you are working, you will be working and studying in a specific field, cosmetic. So when for example, my student, when they finish the course, the pharmacist course, of course, they will need to study more about cosmetics. But as I said before, it's just 1 year, once a week, to learn about cosmetic. But we have in Brazil a cosmetic science course. It's 3 years course, and you spend the whole course studying cosmetic. So production, regulatory area, quality tests, everything about cosmetics. So it's more specific. And this is the difference. So when you became a pharmacist, you will need a specialization in cosmetic area if you decide to work in this area.
Okay. Here's another question from Harini. It says, I'm a chemistry master's student. What extra knowledge does the cosmetic industry expect from a chemistry master's student to know when they're hiring? So in your experience, if you were interviewing somebody with an undergraduate degree versus a master's degree, what would you expect that student to know more than, say, just an undergraduate?
Can I?
Yeah, please.
I think when you decide to do a master degree, you learn much more than cosmetic area, for example. You learn how to search, you learn how to write a paper, you learn how to how to prepare new research and develop this area. So it's a specific field that you can develop your skills to be a researcher. But not only for this, I think you learn how to study. This is the difference. Because during the course, the graduation, you just you have to learn about a lot of different areas.
Just all the facts too, yeah.
Yes. And then you are going to do a master. You learn how to study one subject very deep. So when I was in an industry and I was interviewing some people, and someone say, "Oh, I have a master in this area." For me, it means I know how to focus. I know how to search. I know how to write about this. So it's easier to teach someone that has this skill.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Is it clear what I said?
Yeah, that is clear. Katz or Emanuele, do you have anything to add to that?
Okay. For one thing, anything is okay, because as I said, the cosmetics product is very complicated, and not only just one technology can make the final product. So any kinds of the mix or the combination of the technology is important for cosmetic chemist. And also, if you are interested in the consumer understanding, that is a quite important capability in this industry. Even the lab chemist, not just staying in the lab, but they go to the market to see the people and the consumers, what kind of the product they are buying. The consumer's behavior understanding is a very, very important capability to survive in this beauty industry.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I also agree with Kath. Cosmetic chemist is something different from chemistry. So it's something more wide, with a lot of things to take into consideration. And being a cosmetic chemist is not being a chemist. I mean, there are the cosmetic formulation are completely different from other chemical formulation. So when I talk to new people coming in the company or new people looking for a job, I always love to tell them that cosmetic science, cosmetic chemistry is something that need to be restudied from a different point of view, because there are a lot of things that you normally don't take care when you do, let's say, simple chemistry or advanced chemistry, but yeah, it's a different science. So there's something different.
Yeah. Hey, here's a question. It's on the chat. I'm going to try to summarize it, but it's a question I see a lot. But this is from Nilesh from India. She said, I did the diploma in cosmetic science from the SCS UK in 2008. It has that background. I would like to associate myself in the cosmetic industry, and I have medical knowledge. Basically, if you're in a place like India, how would you get started in the cosmetic industry? I think one of the first things that I would do if I was there, and I don't know how the economy works there or how any of that goes, but the first thing I would do is try to seek out people who are part of the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. India actually does have an SCC chapter, and they're part of the IFSCC. And the important part there is that is going to give you the relationships and the connection to people who are already doing what you want to do. I think when you want to get into an industry, the most important thing to do beyond knowing the topic is meeting people who are already there. Because
Yes.
people who know you are much more likely to want to help you get a job than people who don't know you.
Networking is everything in any area.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're perfectly right. I think one of the things we miss most this year in 2020 due to this pandemic outbreak is the face-to-face interactions and the networking, because when we meet at congresses and conferences or exhibitions, in my opinion, the most important outcome is the number of hands you shake and the number of people you meet and talk to. Yeah, and this is the best way to get into this industry. Yeah.
Like, totally agree.
Yeah.
There's actually a question on here asking about online courses. Now, there are a number. If you go onto the internet, you'll find a number of online courses related to the cosmetics, cosmetic formulating. Now, the thing about online courses is that there's not really an official online course for becoming a cosmetic scientist. So it's difficult to advise people to go online and take a course, get a diploma, and then you're going to get a job. Because the reality is, at least in the United States, and I imagine this elsewhere in the world, if you want to become a cosmetic chemist, you actually need a degree from a university in some kind of science, chemistry, biology, pharmacy. Yeah, just if you go online and you learn and get certified by online, that doesn't mean a lot to the industry as far as if you're looking for a job. Now, I think if you want to learn the topic, online courses are great for that. You really shouldn't expect that a diploma that you get online is going to be the equivalent of a diploma you get from a university.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
And,
yeah, please.
Sometimes I see my students, they are so worried about how to learn, what kind of course have I to do. And I think the cosmetic and also our lives, the word is balance. And something that you probably don't know about me, that I am a Tai Chi Chuan state champion in Brazil. So this is something that I've practiced in the past a lot, more than 20 years. And this kind of exercise gave me some balance to talk, to do network, to work and study. So it's not only about study more, but you have to love what you do. And if you love, like I love what I do, go for it. So just do it. And don't worry a lot what kind of course, because as Emanuele said, or Cass, I don't remember, some companies, they prefer to teach how to work in the company. So you have your certificate, your graduation, and then the company will teach you, will teach you. So keep yourself in balance and make a lot of relation network.
Yes.
And, be part of this association. For example, here in Brazil at ABC, the Brazilian Society, we have a lot of course just to people meet each other and talk, not at this time because of the coronavirus. We are all at home, but I think this is the way, the relationship and the balance and study a lot.
Kets, we're coming to the end of this, but do you have any advice for somebody new getting into the industry about developing their career or anything like that?
Well, okay. So if I can give them some advice, the people who wanted to join the beauty industry is as I completely agree with Vania. So do what you want, and don't be afraid about what you learn, because the beauty industry is very, how can I say, broad. Kind of the acceptance of the background of the science, chemistry, biochemistry, the psychologies, and chemical engineering. Any kind of the specialty is the variable in this industry. So don't be afraid too much, and just study hard.
Yeah. Emanuele, do you have anything to add?
Yes. When you talk about cosmetics, in every field, I mean, in research, in marketing, in developing, in whatever role, I think one of the common words is always passion. For this job, there are a lot of people that are passionate. If you read my resume, I like to write, I'm a passionate account manager. So cosmetic and passion are two things that go along by themselves. Yeah, because it's not simply chemistry or biochemistry or regulatory. And as Kat said, there are a lot of things in the industry. You can choose a different path if you to go into cosmetic. My advice to young people is, if you like this job, if you like this work, be focused, choose something you are really interested in, and go deeply, because every single topic is very deep and you can discover things for yourself, for the others, for new products. So passion and focus are the key words for me.
Well, thank you so much. I see that we're at the top of the hour. We've been talking a while. There are some questions we didn't get to. I apologize for that. We'll try to answer them via email if we can. Thank you all for joining us on this panel. We've had a great discussion. We've had people from all over the world, and thank you for sharing your passion about cosmetic formulating. I think we've heard a lot of great advice in this. learning how to network and meeting people and places where you can learn how to formulate. It's all very important. And, you know, I think we can all agree the cosmetic industry is just a great industry to be part of. And it's just a very satisfying one. So thank you all so much. And we will see you on the next webinar. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Goodbye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Manuel, Daniel.